Greetings, Algo Artisans. It's Sunday, October 27th, weekly market forecast. We're going to take a look at the SP 500, the Dow, the NASDAQ, the Euro, Cable, USD, JPY, Bitcoin, gold, silver in that order. We're going to start with the news right now. Remember, nothing we say is investment advice. Please pause and read this disclaimer. Okay, so here we are looking at the calendar here. This is forexfactory.com, and these kinds of events can affect all markets, especially if they are USD related events. They can affect your stocks, your crypto, you name it. And if it's specifically related to, say, like this first one here at 1:30 p.m. EST, the Canadian Governor Macklem speaks, that can affect you if you're trading the USD CAD. And that happens again at 1:30 p.m. EST. On Tuesday morning, about half an hour after the market opens, you got some consumer confidence and job openings data coming out for the US. And if these items are really different than what's expected, those can affect all markets, all trades. So if I'm in any kind of scalping or anything like that, any kind of trade that might be close to certain sensitive areas of my trade, maybe close to my target, what have you, I might just take profit or at least tighten up my stops on that. And I probably won't be doing any day trading before that. And then at 8:30 p.m. EST, we have some Australian dollar news coming out, and that's going to have a strong effect on the Aussie dollar. That's a CPI data coming out quarter over quarter, year over year, and that's probably going to be very important because the central banks use this data to make interest rate decisions, and interest rate decisions are really what affects markets as a whole. Wednesday, we have German prelim CPI, and it's going to be tricky to trade the euro on Wednesday because it's an all-day event. They're not really giving us a specific time, so I might stay away from trading the euro on Wednesday. If the actual number is extremely different than the forecast, that can affect all markets. So Wednesday might be tricky. We do have non-farm employment change and advanced GDP quarter over quarter. That's going to be right before the market opens at 8:15 and 8:30 a.m. respectively, and that can affect markets pretty strongly, again, if the actual is way different than the forecast. We've got some JPY news, and this is also going to make Wednesday tricky. So both the German CPI, which is probably the strongest CPI that matters when it comes to the euro, plus the Japanese data, all that comes out. None of it is given a specific time. In fact, with the JPY, you might not even get your answer that day. They don't give you a time. They just say, hey, we're going to talk about it maybe today. So this week's going to be kind of tricky on Wednesday, and the data doesn't come out on Wednesday. Thursday will be tricky for the same reason. Also, Thursday, as usual, at 8:30 a.m. EST, an hour before the market opens, we have a lot of USD data coming out. You have core PCE, employment cost index, unemployment claims, and again, if they're very different to the estimated values, then that can cause large moves in the market. Plus, Canadian GDP comes out. Again, that can affect markets very strongly. Friday, I imagine all of the JPY news is out by then. Hopefully, it's out on Wednesday, ideally, but we have some Swiss CPI coming out right after the European Open. You got some earnings, non-farm employment change, and unemployment rate. So a lot of data coming out 8:30 a.m. on Friday as well, EST. So it might give some nice volatility to the market. And then, of course, at 10 a.m. you have the ISM manufacturing PMIs. And that's just manufacturing data for purchasing managers. And that's all very important. All these items, if the actual data is very different to the estimate, it can cause major moves in the chart. So again, you have to trade accordingly. And if it's a USD event, it can affect all markets, not just Forex. Let's go ahead and start with the SP 500 chart. Got a couple of things marked out here. This is the daily chart. Let's start with the SP 500. This is the futures chart. This is really the E-mini, and it looks to me like what we're going to see is a little bit of ranging price action for now. I think high time frame it does want to break out, and it may very well do so, but I don't know that it's ready to do that yet. Algorithmically, there are some hurdles for it to pass before it's ready to break out, but those hurdles might be passed very quickly. For the meantime, what I expect to see, if I really had to chart it out, and I don't like to forecast too far out on these things, I don't trade on this high time frame, but just a general idea of what I expect is probably something like this, where it crawls, and then maybe we get a breakup, and after some time, maybe right after the election or right before, we get a breakout. Election is coming up. There is always some uncertainty leading up to the election, so I do expect something like this. It might occur very differently. Price might even break down to grab some liquidity in this area and then make its way up, but these are the main expectations that I have. Now, this could go very differently. We might see price head down, and as it does, I'd make different decisions. I'm not really trading the indices right now. If I were, I would have some plans, but as it stands, for now, these are the two most realistic paths I see for the SP 500. And if I were trading those, again, I would trade on a much lower time frame, and this information would be very useful. For the Dow, we do have a bit more bearishness on the Dow. The Dow was outperforming the SP 500 and the NASDAQ, so it might need to take a break and catch up. And as it stands right now, it's looking rather bearish. It looks like it may want to go grab some liquidity from this higher time frame, kind of range between 40,000 and 41.6. So what we might see, depending on how things go with a lot of this data, price might just go straight down to this area and it might bounce up. It might actually grab down here at the 618 or even the 786. Any of these areas is fair game. And I probably would kind of watch the algos, look at these levels here. If price seems to really catch some support right here at 41,650 or so, then I might look to long this. But if it's not catching support, I might like to see a drop down and into this area. And if we apply our fixed range, we can actually identify where price is going to want to go. And that would be down here, right at this level, right up above. It's very hard to see here, but this is the 786 basically. I'm going to make a notation here of this line. I'm going to delete the rest of this noise. And that blue line right here coincides with the 786. So if we do get a strong pullback, then I would expect the Dow to come down to about 41,000 rough. We're going to have to play that as it goes. Again, this is on the daily, right? So what I would do if I were to trade this would be to look for price to break below this current support area, right below this line right here. And I might go ahead and short as price breaks down, maybe get a pullback, and I would short down to here. And on a daily time frame, that's a great trade. There's a lot of opportunities. I could probably make that into several trades based on lower time frame stuff, but the trade would essentially look something like this, more or less, probably with a much better stop loss due to structures. But that would be kind of what I look for. But again, price could easily just bounce up from here. Price really could go ahead, find some support. I think it would crawl a bit before it found support, but it could find support and head back up and play in this range. So again, how price behaves right here roughly at about 42,000 or so, maybe a little bit lower, that's going to be a big determining factor whether or not I would go long or short. We're looking at the NASDAQ, and the NASDAQ was actually underperforming for quite some time. So it looks as if for the moment, the NASDAQ might need to go ahead and catch its breath a little bit, but as it stands, I think the NASDAQ is looking more bullish than just about anything else. And I think that's the case because it was underperforming and now it's gathering steam, where the Dow was overperforming and is now taking a break, and the SP 500 seems to be in the middle of it too. So price could hang out above here, and the higher it stays above the midpoint of that yellow box, that range, the more likely it is to break upwards. And you have this all-time high right here at 20,875 or so, and so that might be where price goes up to and might be a great place to take profit if you're in any kind of trade that makes sense for that. Otherwise, price might also gather a little bit more steam down here and make its way up again. But I think ultimately we're going to see a breakout in the NASDAQ. And again, it might take a lot of different shapes and forms, but I think the next all-time high, the next stop-off point is going to be about 21,660. I'm using some fib numbers, and a much higher time frame Fibonacci number is right above that here, this 272, from a much bigger fib calculation. I'm applying a Fibonacci to two different areas here. I've got this Fibonacci, which gives us a 1272 sitting right here at 21,840, and then I've applied a second Fibonacci, which is a little bit tighter with some more recent data, therefore perhaps more relevant data, and that takes us to 21,670. So I do think that whatever price does, a nice breakout would end around 21,650-ish area, or perhaps a little bit higher. Let's move on to Forex. So the dollar's been strong and it's pulling everything down that has dollar as a counterpair here. So you got the euro versus the dollar. So when the dollar goes up, the euro goes down in comparison. This is why we're seeing this big giant move down. Now what I can do with this is I can attach a Fibonacci tool to this to take a look at where it might come up to or go down to. We have some supports that price must break, and that's not easy to do because these are major supports. You have this support from this pivot point right here, and you have supports from this pivot point right here. And price is going to be hard pressed to get down below that. Those are such major supports. So if price remains bearish, and it very well could, it's bearish right now, I think what we're going to see is possibly price bounce off this a couple times. If it continues to bounce, but the tops get lower, then it might level down and come down to this area here. That's a decent little area. If there is a break of this support right here, I might have a target at here, not the 272, which is the natural target for that, but I would front run this big support right there. So the trade might look something like this. On a strong break of this more recent support here, I would look to see it break this area. The major support's back here, but the local support is here. So as soon as price was able to break this lower support, I would go ahead and look for a short, look for a good entry, have my stop loss set appropriately. However you calculate those, there may be some different ways to do it. It'll probably look something along these lines, and I'd have my target front run this support down here, and that's a nice, beautiful 2 or 3 to 1, depending on how you do your stops. British pound is going to look pretty similar. It's just the pound has been a bit more bullish and continues to be so. So you have this strong move down, and then it starts to flag a bit, if you will. Flag not in a bull flag sense, but in a typical I'm getting tired sense, right? And so the dollar is starting to get a little bit more tired, and it has broken below this major support right here. But you do have this old kind of support where price really pivoted off there. It's older, it might not be quite as relevant. So I would be looking for right now, from an algorithmic standpoint, the price might need to kind of hang out where it is a little bit it. Just kind of looking at the algos here. Don't worry about what that screen looks like. I'm looking at it for my own benefit. And I do think what price might have to do is slowly kind of maybe bounce around here for a bit and eventually make its way down. Now, as it does, it's kind of a dangerous trade because you have all these pivot points right here. One could find a short here on the lower time frames, but I probably would be careful trading this. But if I were to trade it, I would be going down to this 1.272 fib extension level, which price-wise, that's going to be $1.2767. It's a tricky trade because of this prior pivot point up here at the top of this consolidation range. Tricky play, but that price action is blocked by all this newer price action, so it's not quite as relevant. I don't know that I would put quite as much on it, but if I were to short, it would be at the break of this most recent bottom here, and the targets would be down around this 1.272. I may move my stop to entry as price touches and passes or even touches the top of this high time frame box that we talked about. I might take off all my risk at that point and then just let the trade go. It really depends on how things are behaving with the algos. So let's go ahead and move on to the USD JPY. Now this one's pretty bullish. It's broken above some important levels. This level here, this 152, this is 152 JPY, Japanese yen to the dollar. And this was a historical high point. The price had a real hard time breaking, and when it did, it went wild. And we have a lot of information about that, a lot of news stories. You can go back, look at the old videos that I made on this. Long story short, that's still important, and price has broken above it. So as it stands right now, I think price is going to continue up. And I did a Fibonacci retracement tool on this large impulse down. It's not a pure impulse, but high time frame, it'll look as such. And I did another Fibonacci on the way up here, but this Fibonacci on the way up is still kind of pending. It hasn't really pulled back just yet, and it might not be legitimate. So this second Fibonacci here is really only for reference. But if you'll notice, the Fibonacci numbers on this move up match the Fibonacci pullback numbers for this move down. So these are important levels, probably regardless. So I'm going to get rid of the more speculative numbers, leave the solid stuff on, and we're going to take a look at what price might do. Again, this 152 is important. Price so far has seemed to bounce right here. Algorithmically, things are rather bullish. Price might still pull back a little bit, but I do think ultimately we're going to see price head up. And a good spot for that to go might be this 786. This is going to be a very tricky pair to trade. It has been really tricky. So what I might also do is go ahead and apply the fixed range on there to get some volume data for what might happen. And we do have some pretty good data right here. I'm just going to put two lines out there where price might go. But as price approaches this level right here, I'm going to be careful. It's right at that 618, and price has already pretty much tagged that. And then you have another level just a little bit higher where price might be interested in going. But again, this JPY, I might really only be interested in scalping for the moment. Things are bullish in the higher time frame. They can pull back in a lower time frame. Not a very pretty pair to trade right now. I would be really careful. Let's go ahead, move on to Bitcoin. So this is a chart that I did Friday and amended recently. This yellow line is liquidations on the Kingfisher. As you can see here, it's a liquidity sliver. A lot of the trades got taken off, right? As price made this move up last week and last couple weeks, and price really pushed hard, made its way up to 69,005. After that, a lot of trades came off of the futures exchanges. However, there's still some liquidity sitting up at 68,167, and price is right below that. So on a very low time frame, the probability is pretty high the price will head up. Now, I drew this a few days ago, and it seemed to me like price might kind of bounce off this line. This is a very high time frame line where price is headed down, and this is part of what looks to be a big giant bull flag in a high time. So with that said, price probably is going to grab this liquidity. It's not a big deal, very small move, and for now, things look like they're about to flip bullish. If I really had to take a guess as to what's going to happen, it's going to look like what you see right here on the chart. Now, it could go down, could break below this line, back into this prior consolidation area, head down maybe to about 63,000, but for the moment, it does look like it's going to go sideways and go up and maybe retest that 70,000 level. And that, I think, is what we're going to see this week. I can't imagine much is going to happen this week, but you know what? Anything can happen with Bitcoin. I mean, this thing could just blast off or dump down. It's very volatile. Very careful trading that. Let's take a look at gold and silver. So gold is bullish as hell. It's just nonstop bullish. So all I can really do is take a look at upside targets because I think it's going to continue up. If I had to look at the algos, I'd say it's already done whatever pullbacks it's going to do. My most likely scenario is going to be just pretty much a move up to 2,800. Now, it might push and go up to 2,850, but it might take a break at 2,800. That's a nice round number. Grab some liquidity and head up to 2,850. That could happen. Now, we might see a slam down. Usually Sundays and Mondays, there are slam downs, and I did hear from somebody in the business that there may be one of those. If it does, I don't think it's going to drop below 2,690. Now, it could. It could easily go lower. Don't get me wrong, but just looking at what I'm seeing on the charts, I think it might go to like 2,700, 2,690, gather a little steam, and head up like we talked about before. Maybe taking a break at 2,800, maybe going on past that. So that's what it looks like will probably. Silver Silver looks even a bit more bullish than gold, at least for the price action. And right now it's just mobbing up. It's staying above the magic 32 number, right? And just some old Fibonacci targets that I see here. The 272 is sitting at about $35.50. If price can break above that, it's going to start approaching 40. Now, really just based on the algos and what I'm seeing, price may go sideways and take a break a little bit, hang out here for a bit, test this, break it, and head up and really get up to that 39. But understand that this could end up getting slammed down. This would be more of a market maker thing. Understand price could get slammed down. It could get forced downwards to go back, maybe into this consolidation, somewhere, anywhere in here. This could be a market maker thing. There's a lot of political sensitivity when it comes to silver and gold price. We might see a slam down, but if price is allowed to move on its own naturally, I believe we're looking at 35 and then 39. And that's going to cover it today, so thank you for watching. We also have a live show. It's every weekday that is not a federal holiday or not a bank holiday. It's at 8:30 AM EST. Come join us. Also, come over to algofactory.tech. We teach people how to trade, how to build trading algorithms. You don't have to code, not a single line of code. You just have to understand the basics. We teach you the rest, and if you're already a trader, we can help you refine and maybe even fix some of the problems that you've come across. A lot of traders are miseducated. We can help fix those problems as well. algofactory.tech. Hope to see you over there, and then we'll catch you on the flip side.